local fella, Lamar High School, and then he went to the University of Texas where he earned his Bachelor's Arts degree. He also graduated from the University of Texas Law School. So, Mr. Godwin.
Thank you, Congressman. I'm going to summarize my remarks in the interest of time so that we make sure that we are keeping me in 5 minutes. I actually set my smartphone to time me, so I'll just watch it and make sure that we're within 5 minutes. So I'll summarize it and say thank you. I want to thank the representatives for having me here today. I actually grew up within walking distance of this venue, so it's really been fun to come back home and look around and see how everything has changed since I was here. But some things haven't changed. I mean, I was certainly raised in Texas with a tradition of being aware of our liberties under the Constitution, and also because I was lucky enough to grow up in Houston and go to school in Houston and Austin, I was very steeped in technology because this has been a very technical state for a long time. And I was lucky enough to have access to computers and access to the internet relatively early, and that has informed my career as a constitutional lawyer who's worked on both criminal law issues and constitutional issues, and also civil law issues here in the United States. So we're here supposedly to talk about the Fourth Amendment. Because I'm a constitutional lawyer, I may stray into some other amendments, but please bear with me because I think they're relevant. But I will point out that the Fourth Amendment, and I'm just going to read it to you because somebody has to actually read the Fourth Amendment here. The Fourth Amendment Act. It says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Now, when I was going to school here in Houston under the Houston Independent School District, I had a lot of teachers who made me diagram sentences. And if I had diagrammed this sentence, it would have been clear to me that this was a run-on sentence. There were really two sentences in there. And the first sentence is actually the one that I think is really important here in the context of limiting encryption and limiting digital security technology. So the second sentence, which has to do with warrants and probable cause and particularity, we know that, but this Fourth Amendment is about more than warrants. It's about the right of the people to be secure and all that stuff, papers, effects, ourselves, and it's also about reasonableness. And so we have before us in the San Bernardino terrorist case, that is not fundamentally a Fourth Amendment case, as people will point out. And Apple has not argued it as a Fourth Amendment case because in that case, the employer in question who owns the phone gave permission for the search. But the implications of what was demanded of Apple and what could be demanded from other technology companies certainly raises, at the very least, Fourth Amendment issues. And this is why. It's certainly the case that anyone who has access to any of our smartphones today probably can find out more about us just from that one device than if they had collected all the computers together that we had all owned between 1985 and 2005. I mean, and put those all together, it doesn't have everything about me that my smartphone has on me. It's a really intimate device. We carry it close to us. It has so much information that maybe your own personal networks don't have. It reveals a lot about you. And the question is, how do we take the Fourth Amendment notion of security in our persons, our places, our papers and effects, and apply them in the 21st century here in the internet age? And I think we have to apply it the way the framers of the Fourth Amendment, particularly John Adams, who was a key author of the Fourth Amendment, likely would have applied it. We have to apply it broadly with an understanding that all of those Fourth Amendment interests are carried around in our smartphones now, and a reasonable search cannot be something that requires the very people we rely on to provide us with digital security to also be assistant hackers or to be technologists who have this other job, which is to break into the very security that they've given us. That just seems perverse. We shouldn't require it. Now, there are some other amendments. I told you I might bring some up. It seems clear and it's well established in our tradition that the First Amendment requires freedom of expression, and also, by the way, for those of you who are Apple or Android, freedom of religion too. But it provides privacy. The First Amendment provides protection for our privacy, recognizing that we need privacy sometimes to speak freely. And to the extent that we have to surrender our privacy because of our phones, it just gives us incentives not to use our digital devices. And I'm going to point out there's a Second Amendment element to digital security too, because we have this idea that you ought to be able to have the kinds of technologies you need to protect yourself. You really ought to be able to do that. That's what the Second Amendment is about. It doesn't mention encryption in the Second Amendment, but the idea is surely there. And I'm just going to mention the Third Amendment, because nobody ever mentions that one. It has to do with quartering of soldiers. One of the proposals was for Apple Computer to not necessarily give a golden key to FBI, but to set up a secure forensics facility in Cupertino that police could have access to. To me, so you're putting police in your factory, they've got a special place. That sure looks kind of like quartering of soldiers, so I'm just going to point that out. That might be happening in the 21st century. But Apple did advance some Fifth Amendment arguments that I think are really relevant. One of them is due process, and another one is compelled self-incrimination. Those arguments I think are straightforward. They're really pretty easy to understand, that you shouldn't sort of preemptively decide that FBI or any other agency or law enforcement agencies around the world have backdoors to our digital lives. We shouldn't require that. But I think that when we think this through, we come back to the idea of what reasonable searches and seizures are. It seems unreasonable for us to simultaneously be asking of our companies, of American companies, that we provide digital security in an increasingly digital world, and at the same time be prepared to undermine it. That just seems unreasonable. Thank you for letting me.